Hello and welcome back to my self-titled YouTube channel. I am the eponymous Fiona. Thank you for joining me today as we take a deep dive into Krobus from Stardew Valley. We are going to be looking at his likes, his dislikes, his heart events, or his one heart event, he's got one. It's going to be a very lore-focused video as well. We're going to get into the shadow people, the dwarves. I know I said in the last video that Leah would be next, but number one, Krobus is the next alphabetically. Harvey, Leah, H-I-J-K. You know what the alphabet is, I don't need to. Number two, we're halfway through the romanceable NPCs now. We're halfway through the romance deep dive series. So I thought it would be a nice time to have a little break. A Krobus intermission, if you will. Number three, I'm very busy and I figured that this video would take less time than Leah's video as like a little bonus to tide you over until I'm done, you know, getting married. But then the script did end up being 12,000 words, so I'm not sure how much shorter it'll be. Why am I like this? So this is video number 7 in my Stardew Valley romance deep dive series. Check out the other ones if you're interested, there's a playlist. So far we've done Alex, Abigail, Elliot, Emily, Haley, Harvey. Thank you for all the love on the Harvey video, it's doing very well. It's kind of crazy. I'm actually thinking about the possibility of pursuing YouTube as like an income. So thank you so much for that, that wouldn't be possible without, you know, all of you guys. This is me right now. Love React. If you want to know more about how Stardew Valley works, go back to the first video in the series, the one about Alex. There's a little Stardew explainer in that video for people who don't play the game. Okay, end of intro. Krobus time.
Because he's my best friend, he's my pal, he's my homeboy, he's my rotten soldier, he's my sweet cheese, my good time boy.
So first things first, Krobus is not a romanceable NPC. I haven't decided if I'm going to put this video in the playlist with all the others because it is called the Stardew Valley Romance Deep Dives. We'll get into this more as we move along, but Krobus can be your roommate. He can live with you. This was added to the game in the 1.4 update in late 2019, presumably as an option for players who weren't interested in the romantic aspects of the game. Like, you know, an aromantic or an asexual player, or someone who just wants to vibe with a cool shadow guy roommate. I speedran the Krobus route in like 3 hours for this video because I've never had him as a roommate before, and it's really fun. It's really chill. I would recommend it. So Krobus is quite tied into gameplay. He's not just wandering around the map like our romanceable NPCs. You can't just like run into him. You kind of have to unlock him through a certain amount of progression. So we'll go through that as like his origin story. So firstly, we have a cutscene about the sewer. You go into the forest. Vincent and Jazz, the kids of the town, are standing by at one of the entrances to the sewer. Vincent says he wants to go inside, but it's locked. And Jazz says she thinks Gunther has the key. She saw a big rusty old key fall out of his pocket one time. Then some spooky noises come from the sewer, and the kids get freaked out and run away. Jazz says there's something moving around in there. The player goes to investigate, and hears another spooky noise. The player jumps, and the kids run off screen. So I feel like this is a scene to kind of tip off the player about the sewer. You might have thought it was just like set dressing, you can interact with it, but the scene is there to be like, you can go inside. You should want to go inside, because there's something in there that's like making spooky noises. The scene also tells us that the sewer has something to do with Gunther, who works at the museum. So in Stardew Valley there's a place called the museum. It's also the library, and also the sign outside says it's called the archaeology office, but we'll just refer to it as the museum. Gunther, the curator, tells you that the previous curator made off with the entire collection. Part of the gameplay of Stardew Valley is finding artifacts, minerals, anything of archaeological significance and submitting them to the museum collection. This gives you more information about them, and it also gives you rewards. Once you submit 60 things to the museum collection out of a total of 95, Gunther comes to your house to thank you in person for all the wonderful artifacts and minerals you've discovered. The Stardew Valley Archaeology Office is being honoured with the Golden Shovel Award for significant contributions to the field. And it's all thanks to you. He tells you he has a gift for you. An old key that's been sealed in the museum vault for at least 100 years. It's a little rusty, but still beautiful. So you single-handedly fill up the museum's collection, earning Gunther a prestigious award. And he gives you a rusty old key. That sounds like a fair trade. Where's my golden shovel, Gunther? What's significant here is that Gunther says that the key has been sealed in the museum vault for at least 100 years. But Jazz said in the sewer scene that she saw it fall out of Gunther's pocket. So it hasn't been sealed that whole time. Interesting. We're going to speculate more on this as we move forwards. To get the screen recordings for this video, I used like an item spawner, you know, like a cheat. So I just stood in front of Gunther in the game for like 10 real world minutes just like typing in the names of artifacts and handing them to him. I must have blown his mind. I am his god now. So yeah, we've got the key, we can open the sewer. And that's where we meet Krobus. When we first meet Krobus, he says, oh wait, what's my Krobus voice gonna be? I feel like he's very soft-spoken. A human visitor? This is most unusual. I'm Krobus, merchant of rare and exotic goods. Make him sound like a little wimp. On this playthrough, he also said when he first met me, please, don't be alarmed. I am different than the others. I've spent a lot of time observing humans. I know you like to shop. Care to see my wares? I think this is a 1.6 thing, to be honest. It's not a new line, so it's not really a spoiler, but I think it's a 1.6 thing where he says, I'm Krobus, I'm a merchant of exotic goods, and then immediately after he says, I'm not like the others. So he says here that he's different than the others. The others that he's referring to are the monsters that you find in the mines. So Krobus is a shadow person. In the mines, there are a few versions of this. You've got the shadow brutes and the shadow shamans. There are also the shadow snipers, but they only come out if you do this quest to make the mines, super hard as like a challenge. They're not typical enemies. The shadow brutes and the shadow shamans are enemies, not with each other, with you. When you encounter them in the mines, they immediately start attacking you. You attack them back, you kill them, they drop loot, you gain combat experience. So Krobus says he's not like the others, he means he's not going to attack you. So he has a little storefront, which is very cute. Small business owner. He has certain items that are always in stock, like the void egg and the sign of the vessel, as well as special items like the star drop and the return scepter. He also has some rotating stock, like slime, mixed seeds, or various fish. He'll always be in this exact same spot in the sewer, night and day. And his shop is always open, even during festivals, when everyone else in the town closes up shop, kind of drops everything. Krobus is the same as any other non-romanceable NPC in that he has 10 hearts in his heart meter, and you can fill them up by talking to him and giving him gifts. Speaking of gifts, his loves include wild horseradish, pumpkin, and void egg. He does eat human food when you're married. When you live together, he talks about eating bugs. But if you take him to the movies, he likes the black licorice. So I think he just likes really bitter, weird tasting kind of foods. Basically, everyone else in the game dislikes or hates wild horseradish. And personally, I don't like pumpkin. I don't like licorice. So he just kind of hates gross foods, from my perspective at least. So the structure of this video is going to be different from the other videos I've put out because we don't have a clear path of heart events to follow. The romanceable NPCs have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 14 heart events. Krobus only has 1 heart event, and that's his 14 heart event. We're also going to talk about the dwarf's heart event because that has Krobus in it, it's relevant. But we're basically going to organise our discussion into a few different categories. There's parts to it. So, table of contents. Part 1. We're going to talk about lore. We're going to do the Dwarf's Heart event. We're going to get into the Shadow People, the Wizard, the Dark Talisman, the Winter Mystery. We'll look at some dialogue and pick out what we can. We'll try to put together a picture of who the Shadow People are, what that means. Part 2, we're going to talk about Krobus as a little guy, his personality, your relationship, his behaviours, his nuances, why he might live in the sewer, his opinions on humanity. Part 3, we'll propose to Krobus. Propose to Krobus. Propose to Krobus. You try it, it's hard. We'll talk about him living with you and his married dialogue, and we'll also get into his 14 heart event. I think that's the best way to do it because I'd rather start with the hard stuff, the facts, and then we can build our speculation about his personality off of that. So let's get started. So like I said, Krobus is a shadow person. He refers to the shadow creatures as a people. When you give him a loved gift, he says, "This is an amazing gift. For my people, it is a great honour to receive something like this." So this suggests some kind of society or civilization to the shadow people. It's an honour. This is also backed up by the existence of the shadow shaman. This is a shadow person wearing this mask. It kind of gives low-key cultural appropriation vibes. Although from my research, it seems like the idea of a shaman is quite multicultural. It's not tied to a specific place or a specific people. According to this article I read, a shaman's role is to serve a community, which again suggests a society if the shadow people have shamans. They have culture, they have religion, they have beliefs. Even if you don't read into it that much, the shadow shamans have the masks. They know magic. Part of their enemy type is that they heal themselves and they heal other enemies. They cast spells. So the differentiation between the shadow shamans and the shadow brutes suggests a different level of training. There's a hierarchy within the shadow people. Another line of Krobus's is, "It's said that my people came here long ago, when a great catastrophe allowed spirits from the void to cross into the physical plane. So again, we see that cultural aspect. It's said, they've got myths, they've got folklore. We don't know what this great catastrophe is. I'm going to speculate a little bit in a little while, but we don't have confirmation. Now, that quote says that the shadow people crossed from the void into the physical plane. Krobus loves void eggs, void mayo, and he sells void essence. Shadow brutes and shadow shamans also drop void essence as loot. And the description for void essence is that it's quivering with dark energy. So now we are going to discuss the void. Don't worry, this isn't like existential or anything. We're not going to stare into the void. The void isn't going to stare back at us. Fingers crossed. It's just another instance of me finding something that I think is interesting and putting it in the video. Like with the male-wife tangent. So the idea of the void has been around for thousands of years, potentially longer, it's based on written records. The first recorded philosophical discussion was from ancient Greece. It's interesting how philosophy and physics used to be so intertwined. These guys were just like, what is going on? Where are we? What is this place? Like, the ancient Greeks discussed the concept of a vacuum, whether that was physically possible to have a space with literally nothing inside it. And at the same time, they were discussing whether the void exists, whether we all come from the void, trying to wrap their brains around the very idea of nothingness. I think it's so beautifully human to be driven absolutely mental by the fact that we don't have an answer to something. There's a ladybird on my light. There's so many ladybirds around here. Plato argued that a hypothetical void couldn't be sensed by humans. It would be, by definition, quite literally nothing at all, which cannot rightly be said to exist. Like, I'm sure this is an oversimplification because I literally just quoted Wikipedia, but I can't see it, so it doesn't exist. It's so human. We feel like we need to know everything. We hate a mystery without a satisfying ending. If you watch like BuzzFeed Unsolved, even though it's about unsolved mysteries, they always put like the theories at the end so that your brain can kind of feel like it can process the information. We like narratives. We need an ending. There's a book about the void by Frank Close, who is a professor of physics at Oxford. It's called The Void. Very handy. I only read the introduction because I'm not a video essayist. I'm talking about Stardew Valley. But he says that as a child, when he tried to imagine the idea of nothingness, I discovered then what philosophers have known throughout the ages. It is very hard to think about the void. Like, it's a concept that we can't wrap our heads around as humans, so of course therefore we're going to be fascinated by it. So this book is from 2007 and I don't keep up to date on the news of the void, so this might be out of date, let me know if it is, but I'm going to use it to make a point. Aristotle claimed that there could not be an empty place. Nature abhors a vacuum. As we shall see, it is possible to remove the air from containers and make a vacuum. Aristotle was wrong. At least that is the conclusion if there is only air, such that removing air has removed everything. And as science has advanced, and we have extended our senses with ever more sophisticated instruments, it has become clear that there is a lot more than just air to remove before we are left with a true void. Modern science suggests that it is impossible, in principle, to make a complete void, so perhaps Aristotle was not wrong after all. So all of that to say, you can make a vacuum easy. Suck all the air out. But a true void, containing literally nothing, is impossible in principle. If we bring this back to Stardew Valley... Are you awake? You in the back row, I see you chewing gum. I was going to clap my hands for that bit to make sure you're awake, but a lot of people have said that they fall asleep to my videos, so sleep well. So the void essence, as we said, is quivering with dark energy. I think the void in Stardew Valley is more of a Doctor Who Series 2 kind of void. It's not a true void, it's not completely empty.
What is it?
Void stuff.
Like, background radiation.
That's it.
You pick up void essence, you pick up dark energy when you go from there into our world, into the physical plane. The shadow people are called the shadow people, which implies that they're non-physical. You can't touch a shadow. It's not working. But Krobus is tangible, and the shadow brutes and the shadow shamans can be hit with swords. Krobus even has a flavour. Apparently he tastes like black licorice. So I figure the shadow people are made of this dark energy. They essentially are void essence, which explains why it drops when they die. A void chicken lays void eggs. So that's a chicken that's been taken to the void or tainted with dark energy. Krobus loves void eggs when they're actively harmful to humans because they have that energy. We're not able to process it. He is. So some more information about Krobus, and I assume therefore shadow people in general. He likes it humid. When it rains, he says, the sewers are flowing quickly today. It'll get nice and humid in here. Just how I like it. I feel like I make him sound creepy. He's also sensitive to sunlight. I'm too sensitive to sunlight to go out on most days. The conditions in here are perfect. Care to buy anything? He eats bugs. I'll wait here for a bit and see if any bugs come my way. I haven't had breakfast yet. And he has no bones. You feel solid. Sometimes I wish I had bones too. So that makes sense if he's kind of just made of energy, right? No bones, just vibes. He also doesn't sleep. I'll tell you a secret. I don't actually sleep. I just lay there with my eyes closed. So creepy. And he sheds his skin. I feel a sensation in my body. Is this platonic love? Oh wait, I'm just shedding my skin. Me when someone's nice to me. He also doesn't age. He says, I won't ever grow old, but you will. Sometimes it makes me sad, but that's okay. Which, so much about this is making me think about Doctor Who. You can spend the rest of your life with me, but I can't spend the rest of mine with you. That's the curse of the Time Lords. It's the curse of Krobus. We could say based on that he just lives a really long time. He does refer to your life as short in a different quote, but he says in that last quote that he won't ever grow old. So I figure he's essentially going to live forever if nothing comes along and kills him. And I would assume it's the same for all shadow people. So now that we've got a sense of the shadow people, what they're like, their culture, we'll get into their relationship with the dwarves. So there's another character in the game called the dwarf. Oh, I should have printed him out. Is it too late? I'm going to do it. I'm going to print him out. There we go. So, this is the dwarf. He's quite similar to Krobus in that he stays in the same place at all times, running a little shop. And you can have a relationship with him, but you can't have him as your roommate. He's less developed as well. He doesn't have nearly as much dialogue as Krobus does. Dwarves as a presence in Stardew Valley is interesting. So a lot of the artifacts you can donate to the museum are dwarvish. You've got your dwarvish scrolls, you've got your dwarvish helm, you've got your dwarvish gadget. The description for the dwarvish gadget is, it's a piece of the advanced technology once known to the dwarves. It's still glowing and humming, but you're unable to understand how it works. So the dwarves are basically hinted to be this civilization that used to be thriving, very advanced, have all this technology, but they fell at some point. All of their knowledge was lost, except for what you can find by digging around. The dwarf says when you have 6+ hearts, long ago, my people knew the secrets of advanced technology. The archaeological evidence proves that. But I wonder where it came from. And where did it all go? I guess some questions will never be answered. Where did it come from? Where did it go? Where did it come from? Cotton-eyed Joe. I just added that to my wedding playlist yesterday. There's also a book in the museum with a theory about the dwarves. The dwarves call themselves Smolyuanu. Sorry to the dwarves if I pronounced that wrong. Which translates to sky people. An odd name for a group that lives deep underground, isn't it? Another mystery of the dwarves is the advanced technology they supposedly possess. Evidence such as this has led me, despite the ridicule of my colleagues, to propose a new theory. I believe the dwarves are the remnants of a once advanced civilization whose interplanetary vehicle crashed on this planet long ago. I propose that this dwarvish spaceship bore down deep underground, and over time, the dwarves became adapted to their new underground environment. My colleagues ask, why didn't they come above ground and live on the surface? Perhaps their old planet had a thicker atmosphere that protected them from stellar radiation, and they simply could not survive in our sunlight. That would explain why they only surface at night to take what they need from our houses. M. Jasper. So this guy thinks the dwarves are aliens, much to the amusement of his colleagues. But in the volcano at Ginger Island, we kind of get confirmation that they're aliens. There's a plaque in the forge that vaguely shows the Earth and something crashing into it from space. There's also some dwarvish writing that someone on Reddit translated with what we know about the dwarvish language already. And it reads, our ancestors came from the sky, but made a new home beneath stone. But we still don't really know what happened to their civilization, where all of their technology went. Once again, some questions will never be answered, like with the void. The dwarf is wondering. He doesn't like that he doesn't know. Sorry, the dwarf is actually non-binary. According to the wiki, their gender is undefined in the code. So I'll use they, them pronouns from now on. I'm sorry for misgendering you, dwarf. So Krobus has that quote about a catastrophe that allowed the shadow people to come through into the physical plane. I think it's possible that this is what caused the downfall of the ancient dwarf civilization. Either the dwarfs got too ambitious and ripped a hole in the universe, destroying themselves and opening a passage for the shadow people to come through. Or maybe the dwarves opened the passage and the shadow people came through and they were the ones who destroyed the civilization. This is backed up by the conflict between the dwarves and the shadow people. Krobus tells you at 8 hearts, a 1,000-year war between my people and the dwarves recently ended. There's still a lot of resentment on both sides. He also says, please keep my location a secret. If the dwarves knew of me, they'd surely send an assassin. And the dwarf says, you're not a spy sent by the shadow people, are you? I'm keeping my eye on you. And this brings us to the dwarf's heart event. You get the heart event once you have 50 friendship points with the dwarf, which isn't even one full heart. That's a fifth of a heart. So I figure this requirement is here just to make sure that you know who the dwarf is. You've spoken to them a few times. You don't need to have like a relationship with them. You also need to have purchased the star drop from Krobus's shop in order to get the cutscene. So I guess this is the same principle, but with Krobus. You know who he is. You've bought from his shop. So if you fill both of those requirements and you enter the sewers, the dwarf and Krobus are there having a confrontation. Valjean, at last. We see each other plain, Monsieur le Maire. You wear a different chain. I can't go that low. The dwarf says that it's outrageous that a shadow person is above ground. Says that Krobus's people were responsible for the death of their entire family. Krobus reacts as frustrated, says that the shadow people only resorted to violence because the dwarves drove them from their ancestral home. Krobus also says he's sorry about the dwarf's family. The dwarf steps up to Krobus, says sorry isn't going to cut it. They start attacking each other, the dwarf moving slightly before Krobus, so we can assume that the dwarf started it. The player comes down the ladder into the sewer and breaks up the fight. The dwarf calls Krobus despicable. Krobus says, "Come and get it, shrimpy." That's when the wizard teleports in. Iconic entrance. He orders silence, and both Krobus and the dwarf stop. The wizard says, "The elemental wars have long been finished. You have no reason to be fighting any longer." He says that they must make peace for the sake of the humans around them. They're reluctant, but the dwarf agrees, says they'll stay away from the sewer from now on. Krobus agrees too, says he's truly sorry about the past, and has no personal gripe. The wizard casts a seal of promise to finalise the agreement. The player goes to leave. When the cutscene ends, if you talk to Krobus, he says, "I'm a little bruised, but I'm okay." Okay, so much lore. So, the elemental wars. I thought elemental just meant like earth, fire, water, air, probably because of Avatar. But it actually means forming an essential or typical feature, fundamental, or related to or embodying the powers of nature. So with this definition, you could call shadows elemental. Dwarves in Stardew Valley are underground creatures. The dwarf says, "I feel most comfortable underground. The deeper underground, the better." And this isn't just a quirk of their personality, because they say when it rains, rain. It's almost mythical to us. Some of us dwarves live our entire lives without ever experiencing it. So for the dwarves, you could say that elemental refers to the earth because they live underground, or to rock because they live in caves. There's also some dialogue from the wizard about this. So he says, "It takes years of study to understand the language of the elementals. To actually speak their language requires a lifetime of devoted effort. Now, if you'll excuse me." Shade. So he refers to the elementals. This could be the spirits, it could be the monsters, it could be the shadow people, it could be the dwarves. It's unclear. I think it's pretty safe to assume that the elemental wars are the 1,000-year war that Krobus referred to between the dwarves and the shadow people. In this cutscene, we learn that the dwarves drove the shadow people from their ancestral home. An ancestral home is a place where someone's family has lived for generations. If we bring in that line of Krobus's again, "It's said that my people came here long ago, when a great catastrophe allowed spirits from the void to cross into the physical plane." You could argue that this is the dwarves driving the shadow people from their ancestral home of the void. Like we said before, they got too ambitious with their technology. But Krobus speaks vaguely here of a great catastrophe. It seems more like a myth. Whereas in the cutscene, he seems very certain that the dwarves drove the shadow people from their ancestral home, which leads me to believe that these are two separate events. So Krobus is aware of the start of the 1,000-year war, but he's not aware of how the shadow people came to this plane of existence. So here's the timeline as I see it. Great Dwarven civilization. Great Dwarven civilization becomes too ambitious. Half-Life style opens up a portal they shouldn't have. The shadow people come through. Sometime after this, Dwarven civilization is destroyed. Also, sometime after this, the shadow people are driven from their ancestral home, and this causes the elemental war. I think it's still possible that the ancestral home is the void. As we said, Krobus talks quite vaguely about his people coming to this reality, but he knows quite concretely about the ancestral home being taken. So maybe the portal was opened up, they lived quite freely for a while, being able to go back and forth. But then one day the dwarves decided to take the void for themselves, forcing all the shadow people into the physical plane. So Krobus knows about that event, but he doesn't know how the portal got opened in the first place. If the dwarves are the ones that opened a portal to the void, then none of the shadow people would know how that really worked. They would just know that it was opened. They wouldn't know the science behind it. So I think these two things can kind of make sense together. I'm not sure if this is the kind of situation where these snippets of dialogue are being written from like defined lore, you know, Harry Potter style. J.K. Rowling knew what every character's fart would sound like, just in case. Or if these little kind of snippets are just thrown in as and when. But that's my take on it, either way. So let's talk about the rusty key. The rusty key that lets you into the sewer. The poison for Kuzco. Kuzco's poison. Gunther says that the rusty key has been locked away for 100 years. This leads me to believe that the sewer has been locked for 100 years. It's a pretty small leap. So who sealed the sewer? It's possible that it was the dwarves. Did they know that Krobus was in there? Did they do it on purpose? I wouldn't say that Krobus was trapped in the sewer. He may not have been able to get out. I'm not sure, but it's not like he was trying. When you're married, I'm going to keep doing that by accident. When you live together, he says, I'm happy here, in the house. I like to spend all my time in a good spot. I don't need to get out like humans do. But I understand that you need to. Please don't feel like you have to stay here with me. So he's happy in one spot. The sewer was a good spot. If Krobus is hundreds, potentially 1,000 years old, being trapped in the sewer for 100 years would be like a nice break. I also think it's possible that him being trapped in there coincided with the end of the Elemental War. The wizard says in the cutscene that the war has long been finished, but Krobus says that it ended recently. 100 years would be a long time for a human, but as we said, it would be no time at all for Krobus. So he was locked in there potentially while the war was still going on, potentially as it was ending. Potentially that's why it ended, that he was locked away. Krobus does mention that if the dwarves knew he was there, then they would send an assassin. That seems extreme for just one shadow person. Is Krobus some kind of war criminal? They had to lock him away to end the war, and now that he's out, he has to be taken down. I don't know. Just some stuff to think about. It's also possible that the sewer was just sealed because there's a mutant bug layer in there and like radioactive goo everywhere. So the wizard's presence is interesting. He knows about the dwarf and Krobus. He's also the one who gives you the ability to converse with the Junimos. So he's very clued in on the happenings in the local area. Krobus says that having a human visitor is most unusual, but not that it's never happened before. It's just unusual. So I think maybe the reason that the key was in Gunther's pocket is that the wizard stole it. He went to go meet Krobus just to study him or like have a little chat or whatever. And then he gave the key back to Gunther. Or maybe Gunther found it and took it back. I feel like the wizard wouldn't need the key. He does teleport in the Dwarf's Heart event. Maybe once he's been somewhere, he can teleport there. Maybe Gunther gave you the key for safekeeping to keep it away from the wizard and his grabby little hands. So we've got a couple more interesting things to note about the wizard. Number 1 is the Dark Talisman quest. He tells you that he sealed his wife away because she turned into a witch and was flying around cursing people. You need to get a Dark Talisman from Krobus to unseal her. It's not super relevant, so we won't go into this quest a whole bunch, but Krobus just tells you he was exploring the mutant bug layer, which is inside the sewer, and he dropped his Dark Talisman in there before sealing up the passage. The mutant bug layer is kind of what it sounds like. It's just an area with a bunch of mutant bugs. This is notable because I guess the wizard has a track record of sealing people in places against their will. He did it to his wife. He could have done it to Krobus. Even if it was 100 years ago, it's possible that the wizard lives longer than most people because of his arcane studies. He does reference someday leaving this mortal plane, but I figure he could easily be 100 or more years old. He's looking pretty good. It's also interesting about his ex-wife, the witch. Sometimes the witch will appear at night on your farm, and if she curses your barn, you'll be left with a void egg, and you can put that in the incubator to make a void chicken who lays void eggs. So the witch has some kind of connection to the void. She knows how to harness dark energy. Again, I'm not sure if this has like a tangible connection, but everything's very linked in this town. Stardew Valley is like this melting pot of magic and void. So now we're going to talk about the Winter Mystery Quest. In winter, if you go to the bus stop next to your farm, you run into a shadow person. He freaks out when he sees you and runs away towards town. A quest gets added to your journal called A Winter Mystery. You encountered a suspicious-looking figure by the bus stop. When it saw you, it fled towards town. Could there be a clue to its whereabouts? If you follow the footprints in town, you find the figure hiding behind a bush. His name is Shadow Guy, and he says, "Eep, you caught me. I'm sorry. Take it, take it. It looked so valuable. I couldn't help myself. Eep." The thing he stole was the magnifying glass, which is how you view secret notes in the game. Then he runs off south, never to be seen again. So, is this Krobus? Let's argue. For and against. For. It looks like Krobus. It's the only other shadow person we've heard talk. The wiki says that Krobus' line of dialogue used to say, "I'm too sensitive to sunlight to go out during the day." But then it was changed to, I'm too sensitive to sunlight to go out on most days. In the 1.3 update, which was also the same update where the Winter Mystery Quest was added, so you could argue that this was updated because that is Krobus, and so it needed to reflect how he's outside during the day. Against. This dialogue change could have just been made to reflect the nature of all shadow people. If Krobus can't go outside during the day, but this other shadow guy can, then that's an inconsistency. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is Krobus. Plus, he's just called Shadow Guy. Krobus has a portrait and everything. A character's name just being written in text like this is usually reserved for very minor characters in Stardew Valley that don't have art. Plus, Krobus doesn't talk like that. He doesn't go, eep, and he doesn't steal. He sources the items for his shop from the sewers, unlike the dwarf, who does steal. So I personally don't think that this is Krobus. You can disagree. It's not explicit. We don't have a solid answer. This raises the question of, are there other shadow people in Pelican Town? Are there other shadow people who can speak English and have conversations? Which leads into our conversation, ludonarrative dissonance. So ludonarrative dissonance is a game design concept. It's based around the idea of marrying together narrative and gameplay. Ludo is like Latin for game, I think, narrative. And then you can have harmony or dissonance. A famous example is the Uncharted series. You play as Nathan Drake, a good guy, the good guy in the story, just out to find some treasure. But you kill like 700 people in each of the games. You are a masked killer. You are the Widowmaker, but this is never really addressed in the narrative. He doesn't wrestle with this huge toll of human life just to get some treasure. He makes his quips and he kind of keeps going. The gameplay and the narrative are at odds with each other. There's dissonance. Ludonarrative dissonance. And it's kind of the same with Stardew Valley. I talked about this quite a lot in the Abigail video, so go watch that if you're interested. It has my cats in it. In the game, you've got the mines, the skull caverns, the volcano, even the cave at the quarry, and the secret woods, and also your farm if you turn on monster spawning. These are all places within Stardew Valley where you kill monsters. It's never painted as morally ambiguous. They're never painted as sentient or intelligent. They attack you, you kill them, they drop loot. It's a gameplay loop. You've got farming, you've got the social aspect, you've got fishing and mining and combat. Having these different gameplay loops is the way that the game stays engaging. You don't spend too long in any one area. You don't get bored. With the monsters, this isn't like an Undertale kill them or talk to them situation. You kill them. You don't really have a choice, unless you want to take an entire core gameplay loop out of the game for yourself, which would make the game harder. It might even make it impossible. And that's definitely not what the player is supposed to do. It's not what you're like encouraged to do. So many of the other gameplay elements center around combat and the things you can get from the mines. That's where you get your ore, your gems, and your monster loot. But Krobus is sentient. Krobus is intelligent. He has thoughts. He has feelings. The shadow guy was able to have a conversation with you. He had feelings because he was scared. Krobus says, "Have you encountered others like me in the mines? I'm sorry if they were hostile towards you. You see, we've learned to fear humans. There have been too many unpleasant encounters. You haven't slain any of my friends, have you?" So those monsters, those shadow brutes and shadow shamans that you're killing, those are his friends. Those are living, conscious, intelligent beings who are so traumatized by human cruelty that they lash out when they see you. And you confirm their fears. You continue to slaughter hundreds of them only to collect the items that they leave behind. This recontextualizes everything. Think about the Spirit's Eve festival. There were monsters in cages. Krobus also has a line, "If I showed up to the Spirit's Eve festival, they'd put me in a cage." In the Adventurers Guild, you've got these monster eradication goals. These are essentially, when taken to the logical extreme, rewarding genocide. Same goes for the help wanted requests, asking you to kill a certain amount of monsters. Ludo, narrative, dissonance. Okay, opinion time. Pure opinion. I feel like it's like the game wants to have its cake and eat it too. Take Krobus out of the game, take out the shadow guy, fine. No dissonance. They're just monsters. They're dangerous. It's a game. We don't think about it. We just kill the monsters because it's fun. But you have Krobus in there, you have the shadow guy, you have Krobus talking about his friends. How are you supposed to just keep going as a player? After you've had this line from Krobus, the next time you go into the mines and you see a shadow brute and it tries to attack you, the moral thing to do would be just to run away and never go back in. If you kill it and you know that it's intelligent, sure, it's self-defense, but if you keep going back in there knowing that they're going to attack you, that's essentially murder. It's like how in Harry Potter, I've made 2 Harry Potter references now, I'm sorry, I was born in the 90s. I'm not a TERF. I am not a TERF. They establish that the house elves are slaves. They half-heartedly say slavery is bad, and then that's it. the slavery continues. To not abolish it after that is essentially endorsing it. You would have been better off not establishing it at all. Look, I know that it's not that deep. I do know that. This is just the kind of personality I have, okay? I find it fun. This is all kind of in good humour. I'm not going to title this video, Stardew Valley Sucks and Here's Why. I love this game. This is a light critique. I like that this content is in there. I love Krobus. I just feel like it should have been taken further. You know, you should be able to like opt out of combat or something potentially after you reach 10 hearts with Krobus. Or maybe the Shadow Brutes and the Shadow Shamans stop appearing in the mines. The Shadow Brutes and the Shadow Shamans don't appear on the monster eradication goals, which is interesting. It shows that was thought about, that it was considered that it would be kind of fucked up to be rewarded for killing Krobus' friends. But maybe, you know, they could just stop appearing in the mines at all. Or there could be some lore added that they don't die when you kill them. I don't know. Something like that. Okay, part 1 finished. That's all of our lore. I've almost definitely missed something to do with the dwarves or the shadow people or something like that. I encourage you to leave a comment and correct me. People have not been shy to correct me, which I do appreciate. I missed a lot of stuff in my very first video, in that Alex video, because, you know, I didn't think that anyone would watch it. But now it's like, as I get more viewers and more subscribers, it's like, I don't know, it takes me longer to do the scripts, it takes me longer to do the research, because I'm like, well, if I miss something, they're going to know. But yeah, I'm just one person. There's a lot of tiny details, so let me know if there's anything else. And we're going to get into part 2. We're going to talk about Krobus. I was going to do like a smoky eye to go with the black theme, but I've got my final fitting for my wedding dress in a little bit. I'm doing my own makeup for my wedding, so this is my look. This is genuinely the first time in my life I've put fake eyelashes on. Okay, now we're going to talk about our little guy, our small bean, our doggo. I'm sorry. I waited until the nighttime just to get this spooky vibe. That's not true, I just had my wedding dress fitting. I'm going for like a bisexual lighting kind of vibe, so hope that pays off. Video's in dark mode now. So Krobus is a very sweet little guy. He's quite gentle. He's very polite. I find things here and I sell them. Care to buy anything? Please, don't be alarmed. I am different than the others. I've spent a lot of time observing humans. I know you like to shop. Care to see my wares? I feel like most people, if they had to, you know, have a voice for Krobus, it would be like, care to see my wares? Care to see my wares? But I just think of him as like a soft-spoken, shy little guy, you know. So he says here in this dialogue that he's spent a lot of time observing humans. I got a line of dialogue from Krobus on my playthrough that doesn't seem to be on the wiki anywhere. The wiki I've been looking at on the Wayback Machine without any 1.6 spoilers or the new updated version. It's not. I can't find it. So possible very minor Krobus 1.6 spoilers. If you put your ear up to the right pipe, you can hear into any house from down here. I wouldn't eavesdrop though. He says he wouldn't eavesdrop. I don't believe you, Krobus. How else could you have been observing humans? There aren't any windows that we can see. So he's been down in the sewers for a long time, listening to the people in the town, their conversations, possibly for 100 years. And he's picked up that we like to shop, which is true. Hashtag consumerism. And I feel like that's why he opened his little shop. You pay Krobus for his wares with money. What does he need money for? He doesn't buy anything. I feel like he learned that we like to shop, and so he started gathering things he found in the sewers to make this little storefront to please any humans that came and discovered him. Or if I'm right, that, you know, the wizard already went to visit him, he just wanted to be prepared for next time. That's so cute. So Krobus does have another line. Back again? I suppose it does fit into my theory of human behaviour. So he's got a theory of human behaviour. As we said, he's been observing, he's been coming up with theories. You coming back to visit him again fits into this theory that he has. So what's the theory? I want to say his theory is that, like, humans are good, humans like companionship, humans are intrigued by curiosities. But I think realistically this refers to how he said that you like to shop. You keep coming back to buy things from him. That would fit into his theory of human behaviour. At this point, he's not got like a particularly positive view of humans, so it would make sense that he's just noticing that you really like to buy stuff. As you get closer to Krobus, he does start thinking about humans more. He has some more lines of dialogue. Sorry, I'm still a little wary of humans. My shop is still open to you, however. You're not like the other humans, are you? Yeah, I guess I'm not like the other humans. So he admits that he's wary around you. He's kind of opening up to you a little bit there. If we go back to that line we read before. You see, we've learned to fear humans. There have been too many unpleasant encounters. So Krobus was afraid of humans. Presumably that fear started to lessen a bit when he started observing them, because humans are pretty non-threatening. He learned that we like to shop. He heard Elliot talking about the spectrum of colour in a duck's feather. He heard Alex crying about his gay panic. And he figured maybe not all of us are so bad. But it makes sense that he would still be wary. His people have been, like, traumatized. But then he has that line about how you're not like the other humans. I guess by the other humans, he means, like, the cruel ones, the ones who would try and attack him, and the ones who wouldn't accept him. He does have a lot of dialogue about not being accepted, which we'll get into when he's your roommate. But you accept him. You're kind to him. You support his small business. Krobus is also quite religious. He says, "On Fridays, I stay silent as a sign of devotion to Yoba." Yoba is the god in Stardew Valley. So on Fridays, he'll just say ... even if you give him a gift. And if you ask him to go to the movies with you, he won't go. There are some exceptions to his silence. According to the wiki, he'll still speak on rainy days, on your first meeting. If you ask him about the Dark Talisman, if you give him a Void Ghost Pendant, which we'll get to, and if you give him a gift after you've evicted him, aka after you've divorced him. I think these exceptions make sense. It might be really frustrating for a player to miss out on some juicy Krobus dialogue just because it's a Friday. For example, when you first meet him, you wouldn't get his introductory dialogue and you'd be confused because you wouldn't even know about the Friday thing. So I think these exceptions are like for the player and not Krobus making personal exceptions, you know? Krobus sells this sign of the vessel, which has the symbol of Yoba. I guess the vessel is Yoba. I think this is one of those things that's supposed to be open to interpretation. You could say that Yoba is the vessel in that Yoba was like the Pope or the prophet or something. Something spoke through him. Or you could say that like we're all a vessel for Yoba. I think it's intentionally vague so that you can have any idea of it that you want. So that it just kind of represents like the idea of religion. We'll take a brief foray into some more lore. So there's a book at the library in Stardew Valley called Highlights from the Book of Yoba. Before time, there was only the endless golden light. The light called out to itself, "Yoba!" Yoba wanted more. Yoba swirled the golden light into a vortex. Yoba swirled and swirled until a hole formed in the eye of the vortex. From this hole sprung a seed. Yoba smoothed the golden light. Yoba smoothed and smoothed, and the light became soil. Into this soil, Yoba planted the seed. The seed sprouted, and behold! A vine sprung skyward, twisting and probing, casting a writhing shadow onto the golden void. After 11 days, the vine bore fruit. Yoba, with knowing wisdom, peeled the tough skin off the fruit and saw that the world was inside. And so that is how the world came to be. Amen. So that's just Genesis, right? To be fair, I don't know much about other religions' world origin stories, but to me that just reads like copying Genesis's homework, but changing it a little bit. So there are a couple of things in this that we could interpret as like the void. It mentions a vortex, it mentions a golden void, and it mentions a writhing shadow. I think the fact that it says casting a writhing shadow onto the golden void means we can be pretty sure that the shadow people come from the void. Like the vine is the physical plane, the shadow is the void. It also references soil, planting, from the wiki. The symbol of Yoba is the Anglo-Saxon rune called Ea, which can mean earth or grave. This could be taken to mean that the people of Pelican Town worship the earth, which makes sense with the themes of the game. Closeness with nature, valuing natural resources, and respecting the earth. Krobus' spirituality could just be like a hymn thing. Maybe he just picked it up from observing humans. Or maybe all shadow people are religious. It could link to the shadow shaman thing. Since the story references Yoba creating both the physical plane and the shadow at the same time, this could easily be a religious text for the shadow people as well, because it talks about their creation. I don't know. I'm an atheist, so... I've also seen people theorize that the dwarves brought the religion of Yoba to Earth when they crash landed, because Yoba is referenced in this sign in the forge. Now, we're finally going to put some hearts up for Krobus. Put your hearts up!
It was a one-eyed, one-horn, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horn.
So when you're at 3 hearts with Krobus, he sends you a note in the mail. Player, I'm not sure how this human message system works, so I asked Wizard to help me write this letter. I hope you are doing okay. I wanted to share this with you. It's notes on how my people build a certain item. Krobus. And he includes the crafting recipe on how to make dark sign. You can use signs in the game as signs. Basically, if you hold an item and you click on the sign, then it puts that item on the sign. So you can be like, these are my strawberries. So he's just giving you a different aesthetic of sign. If we look at the note, he got the wizard to help him write the note. That's so cute. It's just the sweetest. Imagine him going to the wizard. Maybe, you know, he had to leave the sewer and he like knocks on his door and he's like, I want to write my friend a letter. And the wizard's like writing as Krobus dictates. And Krobus is standing there just like, I hope you're doing okay. Full stop. New line. Love from Krobus. And the wizard's like, I wouldn't say love from. Krobus is like, oh, okay. Sure. So sweet. He's such a little sweetheart. Him saying, it's notes on how my people build a certain item, again suggests a shadow people civilization. And again, I'm thinking about the dissonance of him being like, you're not like other humans. Let me send you a cute note. And you're out there 3 times a week, like, killing all of his friends. You are like other humans. Anyway, we'll put that aside.
He did the monster mash.
So when you're at 8 Hearts with Krobus, that's when he has the line of dialogue telling you about the 1,000-year war. A 1,000-year war between my people and the dwarves recently ended. There's still a lot of resentment on both sides. So he's opening up to you. He's sharing a part of his culture and history, his backstory. It ties in with the other piece of dialogue you unlock at 8 Hearts. You've opened my eyes to the world of humans. I appreciate that. So you've opened his eyes to the world of humans. So he tells you that piece of information about the war as a way of opening your eyes to his world, to gain an understanding in the same way that you've given him. You've also opened his eyes, I think, in that he's not afraid of you anymore. He said he was wary of you before, but presumably he's not now since you're like good friends. He also has a regular line of dialogue. Please don't tell anyone about me. Humans tend to destroy things they can't understand. Which, deep. True. But I think, you know, you've kind of proven him wrong. He's more open-minded to you. You've opened his eyes, which is why he accepts when you ask him to move in with you. But before that, we're going to take our buddy Krobus to the movies. So when you've completed the community centre in the game, the old Joja Mart gets turned into a movie theatre. I hope you understand how hard it is for me to say movie theatre and not cinema. Let's go to the movies. I want to go to the movies. I want to go to the movie theatre. Let's buy a ticket. I'll use my credit card. You can buy 1 ticket and go by yourself to see a movie, or you can buy 2 and you can gift 1 to someone and take them with you. If you ask Krobus to go with you on Fridays, he just looks puzzled because that's his Yoba day. But if you ask him on any other day, he says, oh, I normally hide myself from humans, but I have an idea. I'll meet you at the theatre later. So if you meet him at the theatre later, Krobus is there and he's wearing a trench coat. Isn't he a handsome boy? If you talk to him in the lobby, he goes, hello. I am very excited to be at the Visual Entertainment Centre and to consume the popped corn, just like you. How am I doing? You're doing great, sweetie. I bought him a snack. He loves black licorice, which is funny because, as previously mentioned, he tastes like black licorice. Cannibalism. I took him to see Natural Wonders Exploring Our Vibrant World, and he fell asleep. The only movie he likes is Mysterium, which I haven't seen yet, so no spoilers, guys. Catch my full review on my Letterboxd. I read a theory on Reddit that he likes Mysterium because it's black and white, so it's not too much light for his little eyes when the colourful lights of the other movies are like painful to him, which I think does make sense. But then why would he fall asleep? What's up, gamers? Editing Fiona's in the garden for this one in a freak tale of events. There's some nice weather in Britain. Very suspicious. So another thing about him dozing off during the movie is that he has a line when you're living together about how he doesn't actually sleep. He just lays there with his eyes closed. So I think what happens here is that he shuts his eyes while watching the movie to like shield his eyes from the bright lights and the colours, and it looks like he's fallen asleep to the player because he's just sitting there with his eyes shut. And you wouldn't assume that he's just sitting there with his eyes shut. It would be safe to assume that he was asleep because probably at this point you don't live with him, you don't know that he doesn't actually sleep. So yeah, basically I think when it says that he's dozing off, I think that means he's just sitting next to you with his eyes shut. And then obviously he's not going to enjoy the movie because he can't see it. Okay, bye. Anyway, this is so precious. He puts on a trench coat, a hat, some little glasses, just to go to the movies with you. I love it. It's the same energy as him like asking the wizard to write a letter. He's going out of his way to do these human things with you and for you because he likes you, because you're his friend. I think Krobus is very sweet. We're going to learn a lot more about him when we move in with him, but for now, I think he's just the epitome of a little guy. He might be 1,000 years old, but he's my baby. He's curious, he's open-minded, he's thoughtful, he's just all around chill. So let's be roomies. The way you ask Krobus to be your roommate is different to the romanceable NPCs. You have to get something called a Void Ghost Pendant. You can get it from the Desert Trader for 200 Void Essence. The description says, it's symbolic to the shadow people. As a gift, it signifies the desire to move in together as friends. There's so much consumerism in Stardew Valley. Buy something to say, be my girlfriend. Buy something to say, let's move in together. Buy something to say, be my wife. Well, that one's real. So if you give it to Krobus, he says, a Void Ghost Pendant. How did you... Oh, wow. Player. Yes, I'll come live with you, if you like. But we have to keep it secret from everyone. I'll be at your house in a few days. Okay? I love that little face he makes. This one. Tee. And similar to the romanceable NPCs, he has like engaged dialogue. Player, I'm afraid we'll have to keep this a secret. Neither my people nor yours would accept us living together. You know, I'll be a very strange person to live with, right? I won't be able to leave the house. So he's kind of like, are you sure about this? You know what you're getting into, right? He comes across as kind of insecure, like he doesn't want to be a hassle.
You're insecure.
So no wedding ceremony.
So what if I'm the monster that's been here all along?
There's no kind of like special cutscene. You just wake up 3 days later and Krobus has moved in. Unlike the spouses, he doesn't have a outside area, but he does have a spouse room. It's decorated basically the same as the sewer, except there are these like pipes or vents. After he moves in, the sewer stays exactly the same, except Krobus is replaced by a chest, which serves basically as Krobus. It sells all the same items that he did, but it doesn't have his charm or his charisma. And it always says there's too many items in the bagging area. So rooming with Krobus is very similar to having a spouse. A lot of the same mechanics are there. You can give him a gift every day. His heart meter goes up to 14 hearts. You can talk to him multiple times a day. And instead of kissing, you have a little hug. And instead of a heart coming up on top of it, it's a little smiley face. It's so cute. I love it. You can't have kids with him, obviously. But if you already have kids, when he moves in, he helps raise them. Don't worry. I already made child's name and child a void egg omelette. This house has been blessed with 2 children now. Does that mean Yoba approves of our unconventional living arrangement? Unconventional? What's unconventional about having a roommate? I guess that he's a shadow person. But it's nice that Yoba approves. Seems like a chill guy. So he made your kids a void egg omelette. Void eggs are poisonous to humans. So he kind of poisoned your kids. Low-key. He low-key poisoned your kids. Krobus tries really hard. I tried my best to make human food. You can eat it later. Don't worry about it. I want to be a good housemate for you, but I never know if I'm doing well. I have a hard time understanding human expression. But, you're happy living with me? Okay. It's so relatable. I also have a hard time understanding human expression, and I'm constantly groaning. So he's trying to make you food that you can eat. He's insecure about whether he's a good housemate, whether you're happy living with him. This is also reflected in his hearts dialogue. So like the spouses, Krobus has low, neutral and high hearts dialogue. His low hearts dialogue is a lot of insecurity. Do you still like me? Are you still happy living with me? I've detected a change in your behaviour. What does it mean? You only have one short life to live. Are you certain you want to spend it with a hideous creature like me? Poor baby. Calling himself a hideous creature. Asking if you still like him. He sounds like me when I'm PMSing. Literally going up to the guy that I'm going to marry in 2 weeks, being like, do you think I'm pretty? Stolen you. You're mine. Meow. You're not in the frame. Come on. Oh, hello. 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 Did you do a stinky poo earlier? Yes, you did. Yes, you did. He's still here. I don't think you can see him. Oh, I love you. Mwah. Oh, you're so warm on your little head. I'm going to be sneezing tonight. So I wonder where this insecurity comes from. We can't really analyse Krobus' childhood like we could with some of the other characters. But I think it comes from what he said before about how he's different from the others. And he is. He's not hostile. So I figured Krobus was always kind of different. He was born into this people who were very combat focused, training to be brutes and shamans, fighting the dwarves and the humans. And he just didn't want to do that. He tells you when he's your roommate that he left his people. Ever since I left my people, I've been searching for a new home. Now I belong somewhere. That means everything to me. He tells you he belongs somewhere like it's new to him. So yeah, I figure he never really felt like he belonged with the shadow people because he was so different, because he's gentle, he's sweet, and here you are accepting him for who he is. giving him a new home. And he's still insecure. Oh. And he's still insecure because he's not used to belonging. He's not used to being accepted. All of that baggage isn't going to just go away. But if we look at this quote again, I want to be a good housemate for you, but I never know if I'm doing well. I can never get the quote right. It always sounds a bit... I don't know. I have a hard time understanding human expression. But, you're happy living with me? Okay. He seems to kind of accept it at the end there. It probably won't last, but at least he believes you for a little while. He lets you reassure him. He talks a lot about keeping this arrangement a secret. I wonder if the wizard knows about this. I hope he can keep a secret. If the other shadow people knew about our living arrangement, they would punish me. Most of them despise humans, you know. So that last line is interesting. Punish him. The ... beforehand and the way that it's in quotes suggests basically torture, or that they would kill him. He stays inside most of the time, but he does stand outside of the house when it rains, and he continues to be paranoid there too. Wide open spaces make me nervous. I'll stay out here for just a bit, but we've got to be careful. If anyone approaches, I'll need to hide. I think this connects to what he said about punishment. He's still wary of humans, but he's getting over his bias. But he seems very afraid about being seen with you, and I think it's because he's more afraid of a shadow person seeing you guys together than a human. He has other lines about his culture. Sometimes I wonder if humans and shadow people could ever really coexist. It's a lovely idea, but is it realistic? I hope so. Sometimes I pause and think of all that I've learned about humans from you. I wish all my fellow shadow people could know this feeling. He's yearning for peace, yearning to not have to hide anymore, to share everything he's learned from you with his people, but he admits that it's not realistic. He's different. He knows that he's different. He says that most of them despise humans, so the idea of them even hearing him out is unrealistic. But he does say most of them despise humans, not all of them. So there's others out there like him, like the shadow guy from the Winter Mystery Quest. He didn't despise humans. He said sorry. He gave the magnifying glass back. So there's hope. Maybe one day we can all coexist. The dwarfs and the shadow people found peace. Anything's possible. I don't know if you can hear Marmite licking his asshole. But importantly, Krobus does feel safe here with you. He says, the sound of the rain reminds me of the sewers. It's comforting. The sewers were my refuge. I felt safe there. But don't worry. I feel the same way about my new home, too. I love that. He feels safe. He feels at home. I love that you can give that to him. Give him that feeling of acceptance. So we'll talk more about your living situation. You really do get a lot of different lines of Krobus dialogue after you move in. There's lots to dig into. He has a few lines about compromise. We're so physically different that it's a challenge to live together, isn't it? I hope the humidity here isn't bothersome to you. We both have to compromise in order to live together. If I could come help you, I would. But I'll do my best to keep the house in order. So he's really thinking about you as a partnership. It's a relationship, really, just not a romantic one. You're compromising, you're communicating, you're both maintaining this shared household. Krobus is the ultimate male wife. He does refer to it as a relationship. When he has low hearts, he says, maybe a relationship like this is destined to fail. Relationship is a funny word. If you say you're in a relationship, that usually means a romantic partnership, but everyone has a relationship to each other. My relationship with my sister is good, And this relationship is obviously a platonic relationship. Krobus even expressly calls it that when you have high hearts with him. I feel a sensation in my body. Is this platonic love? Oh wait, I'm just shedding my skin. And I want to think about the value of that for a moment. I think it's interesting that Krobus was added as a roommate in the 1.4 update 3 years after the game came out. A lot of the comments I've had on my videos requesting that I do a deep dive into Krobus have been from aromantic and or asexual people, saying that he's their ride or die because it's a platonic relationship. I love that Krobus is an option because it gives people who aren't interested in romantic relationships the opportunity to experience this game to its full potential. To have the, Stardew spouse experience of someone living in your house and just giving you meals and feeding you cute lines of dialogue that everyone else gets to experience without having to compromise anything. I think it's also valuable for non-ace people as well. Friendships are so undervalued. I'm obviously also guilty of this because I've been specifically making these videos about the romantical characters. But they're the most fleshed out characters. There are 1,000 times more books and movies about romances than there are about friendships. Mostly because people are horny and we want to feel something. But it does mean that friendships aren't valued as much when they are just as important, if not more important, than romantic relationships. My best friend, I've been friends with her for 22 years now. The emotional support that woman gives me is unparalleled. It's too much to think that one person can be everything you need. And it's simply untrue to just assume that the person closest to you has to be your romantic partner. You know what I think would be really cool? If you could ask the romanceable NPCs to move in with you in like a non-romantic way. Like Elliot doesn't want to live on his own. Come live with me. Put a bed in his spouse room and we can be roommates. It would require extra dialogue, but not that much. A lot of the spouse dialogue is platonic anyway. Like Sebastian asking if we have pizza in the freezer. I'm married to him in one of my save files and I get that line so much. Every single day he asks me, do we have pizza in the freezer? Look yourself, Sebastian. It's like 10 feet away. Go look. Anyway, I love Krobus. I value my friendship with Krobus. We'll go through some more of his quirks before we get into the 14 Heart event. As much as I try to be civilized, I have the urge to be mischievous sometimes. They say it's a condition of my people. So this suggests that his natural instinct as a shadow person is to be mischievous, but he actively tries to be civilized. Is this why he ended up different to all the other shadow people? Because he tried? Or was he already less prone to mischief? And that's what gave him the ability to develop his people skills further? Either way, civilized means developed, cultured, brought out of a savage state. So we've been talking about the shadow people as a culture. We've been suggesting maybe they have more going on socially than you'd originally think. But this suggests that, they're uncivilized. This whole thread of lore is giving kind of colonialist vibes, like civilized versus mischievous, kicking a whole culture out of their ancestral home. It's a little bit like wink, wink, nudge, nudge in terms of themes, but there's not really enough there to pin it down and make any solid statements. It's not really my area, but I think there's a video essay in there somewhere.
Sorry, me again. I've also seen people say that the dwarves could have brought the religion of Yoba to Earth because of that sign in the forge that has the symbol of Yoba on it. And I think that also makes sense with the, colonization thread. The idea that the dwarves pushed the religion of Yoba onto the shadow people in the same way that Britain was shoving Christianity on people.
So Krobus as a character is trying to be civilized and resist his urge to be mischievous. I think that's out of his deep sense of morality. We've established that he feels things very deeply. He apologizes for the violence of his people and he apologized to the dwarf about his family. He has an urge to be mischievous, but he doesn't act on it. Ever. The most mischievous thing he does is eat all the bugs in the house. I cleaned all the bugs out of the house today. Sorry, I didn't save you any. Smack. But that's more helpful than anything. I love that quote because I guess that the smack is supposed to be him smacking his lips, but it doesn't specify. So I like to think that he just smacks his ass. This is assuming that the shadow guy from the Winter Mystery Quest isn't Krobus. Krobus. That would have been quite mischievous, stealing a magnifying glass, but ultimately harmless. I'm not coming at it from a perspective of Krobus has this urge that he's suppressing and that's bad. I think he made a conscious choice to leave his people because he was different, because he didn't want to follow that mischievous urge. I think he wanted to choose a different kind of life for himself, one where he thinks about his actions before doing them. I think that's what he means by civilized, not just acting on instinct. And that's something you can only really do when you're safe. So it makes sense that his people, the shadow people, would act on instinct because they're constantly threatened. But Krobus in the sewer and here with you feels safe. So he's able to kind of leave that fight or flight. I'm psychoanalyzing Krobus. This was supposed to be a short video. Talk about his attachment style. So some more of his quirks. I'm considering spending my day all balled up and wedged in the corner. What? You mean you don't do that? I just love that one as a mental image. No other comment. I'm happy here, in the house. I like to spend all my time in a good spot. I don't need to get out like humans do. But I understand that you need to. Please don't feel like you have to stay here with me. This sounds like my partner. So most, if not all of the spouses have a line kind of like this, saying, don't feel bad about leaving me. I'm fine on my own. I guess to make the player feel better about abandoning your spouse to go run all over town. For Krobus, I think it is an extension of him not wanting to be a bother, wanting to be a good roommate. He's trying to make your life as smooth as possible. He doesn't want to interfere. I do think he's telling the truth as well. He never talks about getting bored. I think he's legit happy just balled up in the corner. Finally, I want to talk about Krobus's texture. So he says, you started nibbling on me during the night and mumbling about black, lick or ish. What did you mean by that? You feel solid. Sometimes I wish I had bones too. So he tastes like black licorice and he isn't solid. He has no bones. I think he's kind of spongy, kind of squishy, like licorice, like a Haribo, like a gummy kind of texture. I think that makes sense for a ball of energy. Squishy energy. So let's get into the 14 heart event.
Now look at what you just saw. This is what you live for. I'm a motherfucking monster.
If you go to the beach after 8 PM, Krobus is splashing his feet in the water at the end of the dock. Some jellyfish swim towards him and he reacts as happy. Then a green creature surfaces out of the water and Krobus jumps. It swims towards him and Krobus is confused. Then it reaches out its arms / tentacles and picks him up. It starts giving him a ride, taking him back and forth. Krobus starts smiling and reacts as happy again. We fade to black. And that's the whole scene. The player's not even in it, unless you're secretly the green creature. So there's lots of lore here. Let's do that first so we know where we stand. First, the jellyfish are called the Moonlight Jellies. There's a festival based around them on the last day of summer every year because they appear and they swim up to the dock. It's kind of a melancholy affair, saying goodbye to the summer, accepting change, getting ready for the darker seasons. Shane has that line, "The jellies were here a year ago, and they'll be back again a year from now." Like the acknowledgement of time passing, the inevitability of it. You thought you were going to get a video without a Shane cameo? You were wrong. You fool. Look at my fat stack. Wait. Ah. Cursed. Okay. So the fact that the Moonlight Jellies appear to Krobus here, when there's only one very specific day and time that they usually appear, is significant. But first, let's cover the green creature. So this is something that I didn't know about until I did my research for this video. This is like a secret of the game. So according to the wiki, there's a 0.06% chance of the green creature randomly spawning somewhere in this area. It says on the wiki, the creature will only spawn if that random tile is open water, and there's a vertical line of open water between that tile and the bottom of the map, which significantly reduces the likelihood. There's no limit to the number of creatures that may spawn, but more than one creature at once is extraordinarily rare. So this is like an Easter egg. I've never seen it. There's no other information on it, really. There are mer people in the game. There's mermaids, but they don't look like that. So all of this lore to say, Krobus is getting some rare stuff happening to him. Not only does the green creature spawn, which is rare, but it comes and picks him up and gives him a little ride, and the jellies come out of season. I think here is a good place to mention Krobus' name. So he says, Krobus means bridge crosser in our language. So we know that Krobus is unique. He's not like the others. He feels differently about humans and he's able to communicate with you. It could be that bridge crosser refers to just crossing from the void to the physical plane. It doesn't have to be special about him. Like, he probably went to school with 3 other Krobuses. If he has some special ability, how would his parents have known about that when they named him? But for the sake of narrative, I think his name is probably significant. Like, he's able to cross that bridge. Like, if we think of a hypothetical bridge, he's able to cross that bridge. The bridge exists. All other shadow people are potentially able to do what Krobus is doing. But he's the only one who's crossed the bridge, made that decision to like reach out, open his mind, overcome his biases. And I think that's why the creatures come to him here. I think it's symbolizing like he's special. He's opened himself up, and these creatures that were previously, very rare and elusive can sense that. They cross the bridge too. And we see that as well with the sea creature picking him up. He's alarmed, but he opens himself up to it and he enjoys it. He could easily have just screamed the whole time like any human probably would have done. But he trusted the green creature and he ended up having a good time. Krobus doesn't have like an arc really, except for how, he opens up to you more, you make him feel safe. And this is his only heart event, so it makes sense that this isn't like the culmination of something, some big finale. It's just a cute scene of our cute little guy being cute. It's also kind of nice that the player's not there. We get to see what he's like when we're not around. He's splashing his little feet in the water. He's communing with his fellow creatures. I think it shows that even though he's opened up his mind to humans, he hasn't lost that like creature part of himself. It's not like you've like domesticated him and now he's just like your pet. He's staying faithful to his monster roots. He's just the best. I love him. To conclude, so we've covered a lot of lore in this video and I kind of feel like I haven't really drawn any real conclusions. It's been a lot of speculation, but I think that's on purpose. Like with how the characters don't have defined ages, like with how the player doesn't have a bunch of characterization and we don't get a ton of backstory about people. It's there for you to fill in the blanks yourself with your own imagination. It's meant, I think, to prompt discussion After I wrote most of my script, I went on the subreddit to see what other people's theories were about, the lore and stuff. And there were all these different theories, people arguing over whether the shadow guy is Krobus, whether the dwarves are aliens, and I think that's the point. If we had a defined answer, it wouldn't be as fun. We wouldn't have a need to talk to each other. It might be a little bit easier to write fanfiction, but fanfiction writers, we like a challenge. I got to come up with my own tragic backstory for Shane, instead of just using the one from canon, because there isn't one. Overall, you can't go wrong with Krobus. He's great to live with. He's so sweet. He's very polite. He keeps the house in order. And you get to make him feel safe. What more can you want from life? What more can you ask for from a roommate, really? So in terms of summit dialogue, Krobus doesn't have any. I guess because he's not, a spouse. He doesn't come with you to the summit, which is kind of a bummer. I wish that he would go with you, I think that would be kind of disappointing if you were an aromantic, asexual person and you got to the summit and you were just on your own. Although I guess he doesn't leave the house, does he? So, but then his summit dialogue could be something like, I'm out here just for you. This is a special occasion, I don't know. But he does have divorce dialogue. So it's called his eviction dialogue because, you're not divorcing him. You're just kicking him out. So his eviction dialogue is ... That's it. He will never speak to you ever again. That really hits. I forgot to write in the script about his divorce dialogue. So this is off the cuff, but that sucks. When all this time you've been building up this trust with him, getting him to open up, he's sharing more with you, he feels safe, he feels like he belongs somewhere, and now he's back to just not talking to you. Maybe you've soured his view of humans, maybe he's not going to talk to anyone ever again. With the romanceable characters, there are kind of similar things to this. It was something similar with Harvey in the last video, for example, how you specifically were the one person that he got really close to. But Harvey has conversations with other people. Krobus, I think you are the only human that he would be interacting with. And so now the amount of humans that he talks to and interacts with has gone from 1 to 0. And it's possible that his opinion on humans is completely soured again. Because you made him trust you and then you took it all away.
My beloved monster and me, we go everywhere together.
Sorry, buddy. We all gotta shed our skin sooner or later. Shed your skin and fly away. Okay, we have reached the end of the deepest dive into Krobus from Stardew Valley. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for putting up with my unscheduled programming. This would have been a really good Halloween episode, but it's April. I'm not gonna wait 6 months to do Krobus. I don't have that in me. Next time we will be doing Leah. I promise. So, subscribe to my channel, like the video, leave me a cute comment. You must leave me a cute comment. You must leave a cute comment. You must subscribe. It's almost 11 p.m. I'm delirious. Okay, thanks for hanging out with me. I parasocially love you back, and I will see you next time. Mwah. It's probably my last video as a unmarried woman. My spinster days are over. Oh, I get to take these eyelashes off now. Oh my god. This is gonna feel so good. Okay. Bye.